I really didn't know what to expect. The odd thing was that it was very beautiful. You're actually walking on dead men's bones, and yet you're looking out to see the sun shining. The terrain would have been like it is now 100 years ago before this battle took place, or battles. And everything was grown, trees were all grown back, and of course blood and bone. I mean, there's 100,000 people buried there, and you know, everything's going crazy. There's a whole lot of layers to the thinking and the response to that.
This is Hill 60. This is the cemetery at Hill 60. Your grandfather arrived with the 5th Brigade and was fed straight into the battle here. The graves are on the site of the battlefield. This is where the trenches were.
Right.
The 5th Brigade was the freshest brigade at Anzac. Indeed, the 18th Battalion had only just arrived, were taken off the boat and ordered straight to battle.
So he came straight up here?
Pretty much, and were just cut to pieces in the hedges.
So Granddad was jolly lucky to come home through all this and more.
Well, not only has he got to survive this battle,
Yeah.
but then there's the September, October and November battles. And because he's a relative Johnny come lately,
Yeah.
you know, his brigade is spending a lot of time in the firing line for the rest of the campaign.
And hence the letter from September, written from here, no doubt. This is a letter from Gallipoli, from here at Hill 60, which my grandfather wrote to my grandmother, the girlfriend at that stage. Her name was Violet, and that's dated September 18, 1915. We had some fun in the trenches this morning. As you know, only a few yards separates us from the Turks, so we threw some tinned bully beef and jam over to them, and in return they threw tobacco and cigarette papers. A couple of the parcels had notes in them written in French. One ran something to this effect: "Our friends, the enemy. We received your presents of meat and jam, and in return send tobacco. Would be pleased if you could send souvenirs. Could you spare a good knife? We would be pleased. Your soldier friends, the Turks." We finished up with a message saying that we were going to end this armistice in a quarter of an hour by throwing a bomb. And after that, things were on as usual.
So we're on Russell's Top, overlooking the Sphinx and North Beach, and I've got no idea what I'm going to do. Well, I'm going to paint something out there, but not quite sure what. Just getting a sense of it all at the moment, I think. Not trying to sort of think too much about the enormity of it.
I'd always had a concept of it being like New Zealand, of the hills around Wellington, quite steep. They come straight out of the sea. It was quite different than what I'd expected, very different than what I'd expected. I think I was expecting to find it to be all dirt and bomb cratered and almost no shrubbery, whereas in fact the whole thing is covered in 3 metre, trees, almost the whole thing.
So what I'll probably do is just start working and try and compose a painting. I tend to kind of want to get everything in, but it tends to sort of get narrower and narrower. But I'd quite like to get that sense of the fall, the drop in the valley. And I do just tend to work very, very quickly and directly, and then just move it around, move the paint around. So put it on and move it around.
I am quite nervous about what I can come up with, about what I'm going to say, because it's a huge, complicated thing, the whole idea of Gallipoli and what it's come to represent.
And these paintings will just form the basis for working back in the studio, to give me something to kind of work from back in the studio.
All of my paintings have dealt with the figure in the landscape, and certainly that idea of an area of land that holds memory has always fascinated me, and I don't think anywhere's probably got a greater significance for that than Gallipoli. The fact that you can go to this place where so many people died and are literally still there. They are the earth now. I mean, it's quite a phenomenal concept, really. It has all of the hallmarks of the kind of things that interest me.
I think I had the same reaction as most people when they go there, that it's incredibly beautiful, but at the same time, it was a very moving place. All the things that are normally associated with beaches in Australia, which is a holiday sort of time or a fun, beautiful place, it was nothing like that. Because you know the history, it was filled with what we know about all the deaths that occurred there. I've started with a couple of studies of the Cove. So once this is set, or this is just the first layer of paint, so once I've left these to set, dry, get a bit of a skin on them, I'll be able to work back into them, go over them. So today I should be able to do about 4 sessions on these. So this is just the first layer of paint. So while you're on the beach for 10 hours working slowly and quietly on your own, as tour buses are coming and going up behind you on the hill, you do think about what happened there. You don't really have any choice. You're not just painting a beach, you're painting at Anzac Cove because of what happened. As the waves came in and I started to hear the waves, which were really very calming and relaxing, but I started to count them and I thought, it's like each wave, each sound as it runs up those pebbles was like another person passing away.
The Gallipoli landscape is something you grow up with as Australians or New Zealanders. So when you get there, you're immediately engaged by the landscape. You just want to see it, you want to walk those hills, you want to listen to the lapping of those little waves on the pebbly beach. The art associated with the Gallipoli campaign is a really vital part of the legend. In 1919, Charles Bean went back to those battlefields to visit those places where Australians had fought and died while the memories, while the scars of battle were still fresh. He put together a select team and he chose as the artist to go with them a fellow named George Lambert. This is where George Lambert stood when he made the great painting, The Anzac Landing, in 1919. From this vantage point, he surveyed the landscape with Charles Bean. Bean wanted an image of Anzac Cove, but when Lambert got to this spot and looked down on Anzac Cove, and then he looked north along the sweep up here to Pluggy's Plateau, the Sphinx and down to North Beach, he told Bean that this was the landscape that needed to be painted. This was the landscape that was going to have an extraordinary impact on the Australians who saw that work.
I mean, you look at that Lambert painting and there's almost nothing growing there, and that's what I was expecting, and of course it's not like that at all. I guess for me, I was hoping for that harshness is what I wanted to paint. I don't like trees much. Bushes are bloody too tricky. I wanted kind of dirt.
I'm just coming back here to Hill 60 where my grandfather fought. We came and had a look the other day. Now I'm sort of coming back to make some paintings of the area, and so I'm going to spend a couple of days here, hopefully to work. Yeah, it's great. That's nice, it's just a bit of a convex kind of shape coming through there, and then there's another little set of hilly bits here with full of foliage, which is kind of nice. And look at that, see now you're putting that in, all of a sudden this bit of stuff which was just a bit of roller mark starts to transform in a way to clouds, and moving clouds at that. So that's kind of nice. I'm really trying to make some pictures about the landscape, how it has changed or how it might have revegetated. And in doing that, I'm not trying to depict in any exact way the landscape. I'm trying to make a metaphor for all of that experience, I guess.
this morning, arriving in North Beach, it's one of the most iconic images and landscapes of the Gallipoli Peninsula, I guess. Everyone immediately not only falls for the drama of the landscape, but also is touched by the unbelievable story of what happened here, which I'm learning about on a very steep learning curve. The materials I've brought with me on this trip really are all just acrylics and gouaches, and a mixture of materials, and some dry, some wet, charcoals, pastels, gouaches. All the grounds of these paintings around me are drizzled on with this brush, this local brush, which I'm finding has a lovely touch. And it's a rough, doesn't pull any punches, it's just a piece of shit. But it's getting me out of, and it also extends my reach, so it's very, very long, which is probably one of the longest small brushes I've ever used, which is great. But it kind of has a nice kind of explosion on the end of it, you see. I guess all we're really doing is making a first response, reflecting on the place and trying to gather as much information as possible in a painterly way, so that we can make an expression. I can make an expression as the months roll on in my studio. There's a huge history here, from going back to the Romans and the Turks and then this incredible ancient land, and such a beautiful place, has this Australian history kind of dubbed over it. It's like watching a foreign film with an Australian accent sort of layered over the top of it.
I've come back to Anzac Cove to make some repairs to paintings that I started 4 days ago. So I'll just make the corrections and try and grab them, put them down in paint, so that when I go back to the studio, I've got all the notes jotted down with a brush.
I hope I've been able to capture Gallipoli. I hope I've been able to do a decent representation of the landscape. And for anybody that's been to Gallipoli and taken loads of photos while they're there as the bus races by, if I've made an accurate painting, they'll be able to link the two.